So now that we've built our login and sign up system, let me just give you a quick reminder of what we're working towards. So in this video, we'll be obviously prettifying things quite a bit using Bootstrap and getting a nice background image in there. We're going to be using a little bit of jQuery to switch between login and sign up forms. And then when the user does sign up, we're going to jump them over to our secret diary page, which will look like this. And then they can type whatever they like, and it will get updated immediately in the database. There we go. And of course, the user will be able to log out, clicking the button at the top. So that's what we're after. Let's get cracking. Okay then, here we go. I'm going to start, of course, by jumping over to Bootstrap. I'm getting our starter template. So our usual route to getting started, which may be slightly different for you if the website has updated, but what we want is this starter template. And then we're going to put all of this beneath our PHP. And I'll pop the form into it now. There we go. So this is going to be a similar process to when we made the What's the Weather app before. So we'll have a class of container, and then we'll have an h1 of secret diary. Then we'll put in our forms. We'll make those pretty later on. And then, well, let's have a quick look at that before we do anything else. Great. So you can see that's what happens if you don't apply the Bootstrap form stylings. So let's do those next. Remember, the form is a component. And then click forms. And I'm not going to copy and paste the whole thing this time, but I'm just going to remind myself, right, so we need field sets around the inputs. And then we're going to end the field set there. So let's put all of these in first. So field sets there. And then we'll close the field set. Then the inputs go inside the field sets. There we go, and then the same for the second form. And then we'll close that final field set. And let's indent everything. Okay, and then we need to give our inputs a class of form control. Accept the submit, which is going to have a type of button, and I'll go for button success. So a nice green button. And then similarly up here. All right, let's have a look. Okay, looking quite a bit nicer. All right, let's add a bit of text to our checkbox. So I'll just add stay logged in. There, and that will create the cookie if they tick the box. Let's have a look. Okay, that's not quite what we need, so let's just take a look. There's probably some special code that we need for the checkbox. Okay, so we need a div with a class of checkbox and then a label for that one. So let's get rid of our field set for the checkbox and add in the div. There's our label. Stay logged in, and then we'll close the label and close the div, and then we're not using the field set at all. Okay, let's just have a look, make sure that works. Okay, it's still a bit lower down. Let's get rid of the line break, see if that does the trick. Nope, so something's gone wrong. Notice the checkbox doesn't actually have a form control class. That's probably what's causing the problem. There we go, that's better. So let's now do the same thing for our other form. And close the label, close the div, get rid of the close field set. And of course the form control class. Great. So already looking a lot nicer. Let's center everything inside our container div. Been enthusiastic with my styles there. So we might be able to use just text align equals center. Let's have a look to see if that makes everything a bit crazy wide. I think it does. So let's give it a width of, say, 400 pixels. Great. Okay, the last bit of styling I'm going to do before we get rid of the login form initially and allow the user to toggle between the two is a nice background image. So we'll go over to unsplash.com, and this time I know a little bit more about what I want, so I'm going to do a search for nature because I want a nice, clean, simple nature image which will inspire people to write in their diary. I think I like that one. So it's got a kind of solitary feel to it. So let's click there and save image as, and I'm going to save it into my MySQL folder. As background, and then I suspect I'm going to need to resize it. So let's have a look. Yep, 4.7 megabytes is a lot more than we need. So I'm just going to double click and then tools, adjust size. And we'll go for a width of 2000, which is absolutely plenty. And then save. It's still pretty large. I would definitely make that smaller if this was going to be a production site, but it will do for us. Then back over to Firefox. with Fire FTP, and then let's just drag out the folder contents there. We'll do a quick refresh. There's background.jpg. So let's upload it. Wonderful. So just to check as before that everything's connected and working, let's pop the image into our container div directly. So it was background dot, and then let's just check background.jpg without an E this time. And let's have a look. Great, it's there. Now our next challenge is to get it full screen and stretched. So in fact, we could do a CSS full page background Google, but I've still got the page that we found when we did that last time. So I'm just going to grab the CSS that we know works, pop it in there, let's get some nice indenting. And then change the background image to background.jpg. Then we'll get rid of the other image tag. Take a look. Okay, that's good. We just need to get rid of the background on everything except our HTML element. There we go. Brilliant. So obviously we need to work on the vertical positioning a little. Let's for now give it a margin top of 200 pixels just to move it down a little too much, I think. 150. Great. Okay, so now we need to deal with the fact that we've got two login or sign up forms displaying at the same time, which is definitely not what we want. So first, I'm going to give them both an ID so that we can refer to them. So the ID for this one is going to be sign up form. And the ID for this one is going to be login form. And the crucial thing about login form is that it's going to be hidden. There we go. So let's add some text to the bottom of the sign up form to allow the user to log in if they want to. So we'll just have a paragraph and then we'll just have a link with no href but an ID of show log in form, and the text can be login. There we go. Then we can have a bit of jQuery at the bottom, and we want this to be called when the login button is clicked. So we'll get it by its ID. That is show login form. So when it's clicked, we want a function to run. And I like to do a test to to make sure that my jQuery is all connected up right before I try and do anything complicated. Excellent. That's looking good. So what I want to do here is I want to toggle each of the forms. So I want to toggle both login form and sign up form. So let's toggle sign up form first. So that will make it disappear. And then let's do the same thing for login form. Okay, so that should switch from the sign up form to the login form. Brilliant. Pretty simple. Now let's add a link to switch from the login form back to the sign up form. And you may have noticed that actually the code to do that is exactly the same. We want to toggle both of those forms. So actually we can make this a bit simpler. Instead of having this function twice, we could have a class of toggle forms. And then we can have another one here as well. Excellent. And now we should be able to switch back and forth between the forms. Brilliant. So we need to do a little bit of fixing with the layout here, and I think we could do with a little bit of explanatory text. So let's have a paragraph with some strong text in it, saying just something like, store your thoughts permanently and securely. Lovely. Do need to do something with our colors, but we'll sort that out in a minute. And then I want to add a bit of text to each of these. So for the sign up form, I'm going to add interested, sign up now. And then for the login form, we'll have login using your username and password. And then let's have a look. Excellent. So it is there, even though it's not very easy to see. So let's experiment with some coloring. So I'm going to start by just making everything white. Okay, that actually looks pretty good. The only thing I can't see very clearly is that login link. So I'm going to try playing with that. That was a toggle forms link. So let's try first off making it bold, because I'd like it to be a bit clearer anyway. Actually, I think that works pretty well. It's not quite the clearest, but it's clear enough. Let that be a lesson to you that when you're choosing background images, the most important thing is that it doesn't obscure the text or instructions that you want the user to read. All right, but we'll go just as far as that in terms of design. So let's sign up yet another account because I can't remember any of the passwords. And let's sign ourselves up. Great. So now we're over in loggedinpage.php, and most of the work for the rest of the website is going to be on this page. But before we leave our index.php behind completely, I am going to do a little bit of work to create some extra files so we don't have to contain all this code twice. So first off, I'm going to get all of this HTML and I'm going to include it in a file called header.php. Let's save that there, and then let's create it here. So header.php, open it up and paste that lot in. And then if we just check log out, everything should still work fine, but now our header code can be accessed from any other page, and we only need to edit it once. Now this code is unique to index.php, so I can leave that there, but everything from here downwards I can put in a footer file. So I'm going to call that footer.php. Okay, and let's create that file. Notice that this script is only for the home page, but it won't cause any problems on any of the other pages. So it's probably simpler to just leave it there. Okay, and the other bit of code that I want to be accessible from anywhere is the connection code, because I don't want to have the password for my database repeated throughout my website. So I'm going to get rid of that and include that as a file called connection.php. So let's then create that. Open it up, and because this one has PHP code, I need to put the PHP tags back in. And then I can save that as it is. And just to check that everything still works as it did before. And there we go. Everything's still working great. Great. So now it's just a matter of making a logged in page. And that should be pretty straightforward now that we can use the included files that we've just created. So let's start working with logged in page, and we're going to keep this set up here, but now we're going to include header.php and footer.php, and that should give us a nice looking page without doing anything to earn it. Wonderful. So our secret diary is going to be pretty simple. We're just going to have a container div, and don't forget to close your PHP. And then within that, we're going to have a text area with an ID of diary. All right, there it is. Pretty simple at the moment, but let's first off give it a class of form control so it gets all the nice bootstrap stylings. There we go. And then we want to make this pretty big. So let's go over to header.php and give it some styles. So this is the diary ID, and I'm going to start with a width of 100% and a height of 100%. So let's see how that looks. Okay, not bad, but we've got a few problems there. First off is I've realized that our container here has a margin top of 150 pixels, which we don't want on our container in our second page. So let's have a new ID of homepage container, which is going to have a margin top of 150, and that should then not apply to our new container. Of course, that means we'll need to edit index.php again. So now let's give the container div here in the index.php file an ID of home page container. And then we should have the margin at the top of that one, but not at the top of this one. So let's jump back over and take a look. Great. So happy with that. Height-wise, width-wise, however, it looks like it's as wide as the container, but that's not very wide. There is an easy fix though. If you'll remember, there's a related class to container called container fluid, which stretches out to the very edge of the screen. And that's what we want here. We just want a nice big text area for people to keep their thoughts in. That kind of thing. Okay, so now we just need to update the diary field in the database with the contents of the text area when it's updated. Easy, right? Well, we've already done something fairly similar in our code player app. So let's find the code or something similar that we used there. Something like detect change in text area content. That should do it for us. Here we go. How do I bind to the change event of a text area in jQuery? Perfect. Pretty sure that's the one we used before. So we're going to put this in the footer, because that's where all our jQuery goes. And we want to do this with the diary ID, and we don't need to do any of that stuff. So for now, as usual, we'll just alert changed to see if everything is working. Great. It is indeed. So how are we going to update the database when this changes? Well, we can only update the database with a PHP script. So we're going to need to call a PHP script when this changes. And the only way we can do that is using Ajax. So let's remind ourselves how Ajax works. It's been a while. Let's, as usual, go down to the first example. Okay, this is pretty simple. So it looks like that. I'm not going to be too careful about what happens if they don't have an internet connection, etc. We saw how to work with errors in Ajax last time. So I won't go into that in too much detail this time. But we are going to need a script to do this, and we're going to need to pass the contents of our diary text area to that script. So we could either do that with a get or a post. I think a post is a little bit more exciting. We haven't done one before. So let's see if we can find a good example. Here we go. This looks perfect. So actually, yeah, let's use that one. So we're doing a post to update database.php, and we only need one variable here, and that's, I'll call it content, and that's going to be the contents of the diary text area. And we can get that using the diary and then val. So that's our Ajax. Now we need to just write update database.php. So let's save that back over to FireFTP again. Create another file, update database.php. And first off, I'll just return some text. And because this sample code that we've got alerts data saved and then message, that should alert data saved and then hi there, because it should get back what the script returns. So fingers crossed. Wonderful. So data saved hi there, and it's doing that with Ajax. Brilliant. So now we can work on our update database.php script. And the main thing that we need to do is get the post variable. So let's check that it's been passed first. Array key exists. And we called it content, and it should be in the post array. And let's put our parentheses in the right place. And so if it does, for now, let's just echo it. All right. There we go. ADA. So it's getting the contents of what we're writing. Wonderful. So all we need to do is save that to the database. So we'll need to connect to the database, which we can now do really easily using our connection.php script. And then we just need our queries. So we want to update the users table, and we want to set, let's just check what the variables were, diary, and we want to set that equal to MySQL real escape string post content. And we want to do that where the ID is equal to, and where are we going to get this ID from? Well, it's stored as a session variable. So if we start the session here, we should be able to access it. So let's use MySQL real escape string, just in case, even though there's pretty much zero chance of this variable being anything other than a number. and as usual I'll pop a limit 1 on the end there just in case. And then we'll do a check to see that that's been processed correctly via link and query. And if it has, for now we'll just echo success, else echo failed. Okay, and let's have a look. Okay, we've got some warnings and a failure there. Oh, it's my classic error. Don't forget the link in MySQL real escape string. Success! Hurrah! And let's convince ourselves that that's true. I've probably been logged out of users now, so let's log back in. I'll get the password from connection.php. There we are. And there we go. You can see it's right there in the database. Great, so we're pretty close to being done now. Let's just get rid of the code here because we're not going to return anything to the script. We'll just leave that blank. And then we'll go back to footer.php and remove the alert. So we can get rid of the done function completely. So let's take a look. So nothing's popping up, but is it updating in the database? Fingers crossed, yes it is. Wonderful. So a couple more slight tweaks. One issue that we have is when we load the logged in page initially, the diary code doesn't display. And that's of course no good to us. So let's load the diary code at the top here. So when we know that we're logged in, we'll include connection.php and then we'll run a query which will be select diary from users where ID equals, and then we'll have MySQL I real escape string, and we're using session ID, and we'll have a limit 1 there. And then we want to do the query. So that's MySQL I query, and we want to get the results of that straight away. So we can actually do that all on one line. So we could have MySQL I fetch array and then use the query directly, and we could set row equal to that, and then let's have a variable diary content which is going to be equal to row and then diary, and then we'll just echo diary content in the middle of the text area. And just before we run that, let's pop the link in there, and we should also have an empty diary content string just in case there isn't any, so we don't get any PHP errors down here. But just before we run that, let's just add in our links, and now we should find that the saved diary content appears there. So that is really cool. If I refresh, it's all saved. Fabulous. So we're really close to being done. All that remains is this header here, which doesn't look great. So let's go back over to Bootstrap and get a nice nav bar at the top there so that everything looks good. So over to documentation, components, and navbar. And then we'll just take that navbar there and put it above our container fluid div. So before we edit it, let's just check that it looks okay. Okay, that's a start, but we've got a couple of things to fix there. So first off, we no longer need our logged in, log out code at the top here, but I will be keeping that link. So I'll just borrow that for the moment. We'll change the navbar brand to Secret Diary. We'll get rid of all of those links, and we'll also change the navbar class to navbar fixed top. So it's all stretched out and fixed at the top. We do want to pull right here, but it's not going to be a form. So let's change that to a div. Get rid of the input. And I want to make the button a link with the href being what I just copied, so to the logout page. And then we want to change search to logout. All right, let's take a look. Okay, that's pretty good, but our text area is of course hidden behind our navbar there, so we should be able to fix that quite easily with a quick margin in our header, but we will need to give it an ID first of all, our container fluid. So this is container logged in page. Let's copy that and then open the header, and in the styles we want container logged in page. And let's give that a margin top of, let's try 70 pixels. That's a little bit too much, I think. I'm going to go for 60 instead. Perfect. And then of course when the user logs out, they're back to the home page. So just one small thing left to fix, and that is our error messages. So if I don't put a password in right now, of course I get an error message, but it's not particularly nicely displayed, and of course I want to use Bootstrap alerts to make those look a lot nicer. So let's copy the code over from there, and all of these are going to be in our index.php. And so we'll add this here. So we'll check to see if error is not an empty string. Then we'll echo all of this, but we'll want to put the error string itself in the middle of it. Okay, let's have a look. So now we should have much prettier error messages. Wonderful. Similarly, if I try and log in with something that doesn't work, we get a nice error message there as well. Wonderful. So that is as far as we're going to go on this project. There's a fair bit more that you could do with it if you wanted. One quite fun extra would be to validate the user's email address. And that's not too tricky to do. You just send them an email, as we know how to do, with a random code, which you then put into a field in the database, and then they click on a link which has that code embedded in it, and then it checks the code against the database, and if it's correct, then consider the email address validated. You could also offer different diary pages for different dates, and you could set up a password reset system which emailed the user if they can't remember their password, and again sets up a special link via an item in the database, and then when the user clicks back on that link from their email address, they're given the opportunity to reset their password. But this is as far as we're going to go, and congratulations once again on making it to the end of the MySQL section of the course. You've done some really advanced stuff in this section, so pat yourself on the back, go have a break and recharge before we unleash the power of Google Maps, Facebook, Twitter, and an unlimited number of other web services using APIs.